Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I am here today on the second last day of 2019 to share the entirety of my Oracle deck collection. I've been going through my collections quite a bit the last couple of days, preparing in part for the 31 Days of Tarot coming up in a little while, and also thinking about decks that I want to really spend some time really getting to know in depth during 2020, which I'm doing a bit of a depth here for. So something else that I've been doing is cataloging all of my decks. So I've been making a spreadsheet including deck name and creator's name, and also going back through my records and finding dates that I added decks to my collection if I can. I think that this information is really good to have. So I've been working on that, and in the process I thought, why not share my collection with you all. I've seen quite a few channels that I subscribe to do a video like this maybe once a year, sharing their complete collection, and then can talk a little bit about new decks of the year, or things that have changed in terms of our preferences and so on. So I thought, why not? I've never done this before. I will share my Oracle deck collection. So this has involved me finding out how many decks I actually own. And my Oracle deck collection is actually a bit bigger than I imagined it to be. I own 34 Oracle decks. And again, that's all the decks I've ever owned and have ever had. So I have 34 decks. I do have 2 decks on pre-order that I've already paid for that aren't here yet. So I will have 36, and that will be my collection for 2020. Since I don't really plan on shopping much. I'm not going on a total, hard and fast no buy, but I'm not looking to grow my collection either. So I have 34 decks here, and I haven't really arranged them too much in categories or anything, but because I kind of shelve them that way, you will see some themes as I share them. So without further ado, the first deck in my collection is a Lenormand deck, and folks will know I plan to learn Lenormand in 2020. So I don't have very many Lenormand decks because I can't read Lenormand yet, but I did want to have a few to work with as I learn, right? A few options. So the first Lenormand deck I have is the Story in Color Lenormand by Kelly Fitzgerald of The Truth in Story. I ordered this deck quite some time ago, actually, knowing that I wanted to learn Lenormand and that this would be one of the decks I would really want to work with. And one of the 2 decks I have on pre-order is the mini version of this deck, which I thought would be good because I can't do a grand tableau with cards this size on the table that I have to use. So I will have 2 copies, a big one and a baby. And these are abstract style watercolor paintings whose colors are not being done justice by this horrible lighting at all. But I really like this deck. It's quite non-traditional for a Lenormand, but I like that. You do get the playing card association and the number there and the title. And these beautiful watercolors. And here's the back of the cards. And part of the reason that I ordered this deck, aside from just really liking Kelly's paintings, is the way that Kelly has addressed the issue of the gentleman and lady significator cards, which has been a huge barrier to my wanting to learn Lenormand at all, as I've mentioned in other videos. And so what Kelly has done is included a querent and a significant, which I think is a great, completely neutral way to include cards that serve the function that a significator card for the querent, for example, is supposed to serve, without the heteronormativity involved of, say, having to have a lady significator and then being left with a gentleman to be your significant, right? So the Story in Color Lenormand feels really inclusive to me, and I just really like it aesthetically. So I knew, even though I didn't read Lenormand just yet, I knew that I wanted to have this one in my collection when I did learn, which would be this year. So it's the Story in Color Lenormand by Kelly Fitzgerald. The second deck that's also a Lenormand deck, these are the only 2 Lenormands in my collection, is the Green Glyphs Lenormand by James R. Eads, which I just did an unboxing of, so I won't spend too much time going through again. But similarly to Kelly's deck, I liked the way that James R. Eads in his Green Glyphs tackled the significator issue as well. So in this deck, which is not going to focus for me, is it? In this deck, there are 2 gentleman cards, 2 lady cards, and 2 person cards, which I also think is really excellent. And I was even like a little bit emotional, I think, in my unboxing, because I really liked that approach, and it felt really good to have a deck like that. This one is a more, traditional depiction of the Lenormand cards, I think, with the playing card insets there, which I also like, and I'm really excited to work with. So that's the Green Glyphs Lenormand by James R. Eads. And I will mention here that the other deck, the one other Oracle deck that I have on pre-order that will be coming at some point in 2020, is the Memento Mori Oracle by Claire Goodchild of Black and the Moon. And that's an Oracle deck that also includes a Lenormand deck within it. So it has the Lenormand cards, but then it also has a bunch of other Oracle cards as well. So I will have a couple of Lenormand decks to learn and practice with, which I'm excited about. And I'm excited about that deck because I'm a big Claire Goodchild Black and the Moon fan as well. I have a few Oracle decks in my collection that she created. So I have the Arcana of Astrology Oracle deck, which is a 42 card deck, and this deck is one that I do not do readings with. This is a deck that I bought to use to display the moon phases on my reading table. I like to always be aware of the moon phases, so I bought the deck mostly for that, and to work within kind of ritual context, or to lay out a card for my when I'm doing my full moon reading, to kind of be in the center of the reading. And also to work within studying astrology. So there are some other cards in the deck. There are, for example, asteroids. So that's Psyche. There is a card with a constellation for each of the zodiac signs in the deck. And there are cards for each of the astrological planets as well. So, for me, this is more of a study tool and a ritual tool and a display tool than it is a working deck for readings per se. But with that, it is a deck that I use really frequently because I always have a moon phase out. So, that's the Arcana of Astrology by Claire Goodchild of Black and the Moon. Continuing on with the theme here. I have the Compendium of Constellations Oracle deck, also by Claire Goodchild of Black and the Moon, and this is one of my absolute favorite Oracle decks in my collection. It's huge. There's 90 cards, but the cards aren't very big. And so this deck has each card with a constellation in it, and each constellation has a keyword as well. There we go. And I have a book that I use with this deck that is no affiliation with it at all. It's a astronomy and stargazing book that has a little bit about each constellation and how it got its name. And I like learning about that because the keywords really do reflect those stories, but the deck didn't come with a guidebook. So I've enjoyed learning about those, but the deck is very readable, just with the keywords. Without any extra information, and I think it's just stunning. It looks beautiful beside a whole lot of other different decks with its color palette. I really like working with this deck, and that's the Compendium of Constellations Oracle deck. Finally, the third and final Black and the Moon deck that I have is the second edition of the Oracle of Oddities. And this is a deck that I'm considering putting up for trade in a trade train that I'm have expressed interest in for the new year. I just haven't bonded with this one quite as much as the others. And I like it aesthetically. So there are a number of different editions of the Oracle of Oddities. And this one is the second. There are 3. And I like the style. Folks will know Claire from Black and the Moon created the Antique Anatomy Tarot, and this one very much goes with that. But for whatever reason, I haven't really connected with this deck too much. I'm not sure. It is beautiful, though, isn't it? The Oracle of Oddities 2nd edition reprint by Claire Goodchild. And I will say something, you know, I don't get excited about tuck boxes, but isn't it great when the tuck box has that little extra piece that folds away that just makes grabbing the cards that little bit easier? I love a little touch like that. So that is the Oracle of Oddities 2nd edition, also by Claire Goodchild of Black and the Moon. Okay, so then that was 5 decks and 10 minutes. Next is the newest Oracle deck to my collection, which is the Literary Witches Oracle, a 70-card deck and guidebook written by Tasia Kirayskaya and illustrated by Katie Horan. This is a deck that I just got for Christmas holidays from my mom, and it is featuring female authors from many genres and time periods. And I read a lot. I read predominantly books written by women. This deck really appealed to me. And then in the new year, over on Kelly Bear's channel, we'll be reading one of these authors a month for 2020. So that kind of nudged me over to getting this deck. And there are some authors in here that I know really well. There are some authors that I've never read before, but I've heard of. And there are some that are completely new to me. I've read quite a bit of Audre Lorde, very important author. Foru Ferozad, whose name I'm probably saying wrong, is who we'll be reading in January. And Octavia Butler is one of my absolute favorite authors of all time. She writes incredible science fiction that, yeah, there's really nothing like Octavia Butler's work. So this deck mostly features those authors. There's also some Witches' Tools cards with they'll look almost a little bit like Lenormand cards, actually. So I'm keen to work with this deck, but haven't really worked with it yet. I've just been reading the book. So that's Literary Witches Oracle by Tasia Kirayskaya and Katie Horan, my newest deck. Another deck that I got this year that's quickly become another absolute favorite, and I have a review of this deck, so I won't spend too much time here. Space Between the Notes, L. Ron Mills' deck, the Spirit Doodle cards. This is another deck that I feel like there's really just nothing like it. Here's the back, which if you look closely is a lined doodle that is glowing. And this deck is definitely not in order because I use it all the time. So we have these different doodles, and they have elemental associations. And the guidebook for this deck is great. It has musical associations and crystals and reading suggestions and activities and all kinds of things that you could just spend a whole day with a doodle. I think that this deck works well for daily draws as well as for, like, you could put them in a larger spread as well. This deck plays well with others. I like to use it with a tarot deck. And I have the book on my ebook reader and in the paper copy. And really enjoyed that deck this year. And that's the Spirit Doodle cards by L. Ron Mills. I'm trying to keep the decks kind of tidy in a chair just right here as I go through them so that I can keep track. Another deck that was new to me this year is, I think, one that a lot of folks probably got and have seen, which is the Archetypes Wild Unknown Archetypes deck by Kim Kranz, creator of the Wild Unknown. I feel like I'm the only person here sometimes that doesn't have the Wild Unknown tarot deck, but I do have this one. And it's a round oracle deck, the only round oracle deck I own. I own one round tarot deck and one round oracle, and this is it. And I really love this. It's a line drawing and also collage style deck. There are some really incredible cards in here. I've been enjoying working with this deck so far only for single card draws, partly because the deck is so large. But the book is quite good as well, so I've been drawing one card and reading the guidebook to go with it. I don't know a lot about like Jungian psychoanalysis, which is where the idea of archetypes comes from, as far as I know. But the guidebook has really lots of interesting insights about each card. And I'm looking forward to working with this one more in the new year. Again, it's one that has not been in my collection that long, but has become quickly a deck that I love, particularly for single card, drawing one card for reflection. So that's the Wild Unknown Archetypes by Kim Kranz. And that takes us into the Animal Oracle decks. Folks will know that I love Animal Oracle decks, so this is one of the bigger categories in my collection for sure. So I have the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit deck, also by Kim Kranz. This is I want to say it's the second edition. This is the edition just before the mass market version. So after it had gone to mass market, I found this copy, brand new copy of the indie version in a shop in Toronto. So I got it and it quickly became a favorite. It has animals in different suits. So of course, air and water. And I think these illustrations are just beautiful. Earth, water. There's a nice range of animals. I included this deck actually in my very first YouTube video ever. I talked about a reading with this deck. There is a spirit suit in this deck, which includes like a phoenix and a unicorn and so on. And I actually don't use those cards usually or ever. I like it as a kind of straightforward animals in nature, like actually definitely existing animals in nature deck a bit better. So that is the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit by Kim Kranz. And what I got, it had the guidebook was sold separately, but now in the mass market version it comes in a bigger box with the guidebook included. I don't often use the guidebook for this deck. I have kind of a strong enough association with animals to just work with them on their own, because they don't, of course, have any keywords or anything like that. But I really, really love this deck, the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit by Kim Kranz. Another animal deck I love, which is completely black and white, is the 100 Ink Animals Oracle card deck by Jessica Gowling. And this was a gift from my grandmother. She had asked me for a little gift list, so she didn't pick this on her own completely, but good gift, Grandma. And these are, like the name says, 100 animals with ink drawings. And I used this deck for a year ahead spread for this year, actually. So my 2019 December animal that I've been exploring is llama. And there's a single keyword, and there is, it doesn't fit inside the box, but there is a small guidebook for this deck that has some more keywords, reverse keywords, and a little bit about each animal, which is great. This deck has quite a lot of animals in it that I had actually never heard of or never seen or knew very little about, like this little one. So working with this deck has meant learning about some new animals, which I love. I love the neutrality of this deck with it being black and white. You don't see a lot of completely black and white animal decks. And I like black and white decks a lot, so this deck really appealed to me when I saw it. And I like to work with this one as well. So that is the 100 Ink Animals Oracle card deck. Then I have also by Jessica Gowling, and I debated whether to even include this as a deck, because it's not like a deck per se. But I bought from Jessica's Etsy shop these full moon display cards. So they're just on they're hand cut out and they're just on a thick paper, but it has the different full moons. So wolf moon, snow moon, worm moon, the rabbit, right? And so these are just nice little full moon images. Again, I just put these out when it's full moon time or I'm doing a full moon reading, not to shuffle and do a reading with. But it just came with this little sheet explaining each of the names of the different full moons throughout the year. And I really liked them, so that's another just display deck for me. Okay, so that was the full moon cards. Next is a more recent animal deck to my collection, the most recent one actually, which is the Fauna Inspiration cards by Rebecca Lefebvre and Phoebe Hunt. I did a walkthrough kind of review of this deck, and this is the only deck that I have which is a double-sided deck. So we have animals on one side, and I think the images are just beautiful. This ink over watercolor is really stunning. And then the, oh, that's the title card. But then on the back, there are the meanings on the back of each animal with a keyword and a little write-up and an elemental association as well. So this deck I've not had for all that long, but it's another, I'm working with usually one animal deck all the time. So it's been a great addition to the collection, and I really like the color palette a lot. It looks great with a lot of other decks. That's the Animal Inspiration, or sorry, Fauna Inspiration. Fauna Inspiration, not Animal Inspiration, Fauna Inspiration. And there's actually a Flora Inspiration as well, which is a plant-based deck, which is also beautiful. My plant knowledge is so limited that I feel like I wouldn't be able to work with it as readily as something like this. So it's the Fauna Inspiration deck. I have a more specific animal deck, which is the Birds Oracle deck, created by Jessica Blaine Smith and illustrated by Mia Emily Freeman. And this deck, I am told that there is going to be a birds deck too. So there'll be another deck with different birds, and that one will definitely be on my wish list as well. This is the back with lots of feathers. This deck has incredible, just so soft, luxurious cardstock. There is a guidebook. And these ones that are interesting because the bird's name isn't even on the card. No keywords, no name, no nothing. So this is one where I work with the guidebook as well. And the cards are just subtly numbered so that you can find them easily in the guidebook. And some of these birds are extremely familiar to me, and I see them around, and we live in the same territory. And some of these birds, like I know that guy pretty well, the turkey. And some of the birds I've never seen in real life. Certainly, I've never seen the dodo bird in real life, which is in here. But I really like the birds deck, and I know I'm not alone in this because I know other people have made videos about it, but I think about sometimes elemental associations of my decks, and I feel like air is an element that I don't have a lot of decks that I would readily associate with, and air is also like really absent in my birth chart. Maybe those things are related, but the Birds Oracle is a very airy deck, of course. So that's a beautiful deck, and I'm looking forward to Birds Oracle 2. I have no idea like the timeline for that, but I do know that it is a plan anyway. I have a deck that I just shared for my kind of year ahead reading for 2020, and I drew my Oracle deck, my animal cards for the year from this deck, which is the Animal Allies Oracle by Jessica Swift, and it's a 60 card deck. I feel like I keep saying this is one of my favorites over and over again, but it's true. This is one of my favorite Oracle decks as well, for animal. And so all the animals that I drew for 2020 are still sitting on the top. So squirrel for 2019. I love the colors of this deck. I love the painting style of this deck. I love the assortment of animals. There wasn't really any totally unfamiliar animals in this deck for me. And I feel like the paintings are so expressive. They don't need keywords. They don't need anything else. And there is a little fold-out pamphlet with it as well for associations. Really love that. So that is the Animal Allies Oracle by Jessica Swift. Now the last Oracle deck in my collection that I put in the animal category, another favorite, and this is a Blue Angel deck, The Secret Language of Animals, Oracles, Cards, Endangered Voices of Mother Earth by Chip Richards. This deck has a really great guidebook. And this deck also, unlike quite a few of my others, has keywords for each animal. Sometimes I struggle with decks with keywords for animals because if my association is different, it can feel a little bit jarring, but with this deck I haven't had that problem. I like the paintings in this deck. I like the keywords. This makes a great daily draw deck as well. It does have that glossy, I don't love this like shiny cardstock that's a bit sticky. There's a lion on the back. But I do really enjoy this Oracle deck as well. And it has quite a few animals in it that are in none of the other Oracle decks that I own. It also has cards for elements. So it has, I think, air, water, earth, fire, and wood. And then it has animals associated with each of those, which is a bit of a system, which is cool. So that's The Secret Language of Animals by Chip Richards, the last of my animal Oracle decks. Okay, we are 26 minutes in, and I am halfway through. We are making good time. Okay, next pile of decks. I have another little deck. This is the Whispering Woods Oracle by Jessica Lee. It's a US Games deck. And this deck is a bit different from all the other decks in my collection. It's just text-based. So it has little messages, and they all just have the same frame, but they're forest-related affirming messages. I really like traveling with this deck. Particularly, I have taken this deck on like camping and cottaging and forest type little trips that I've been on. It's, you know, nice and compact. The box is a magnetic box. Of course, with it being text-based, there's no guidebook to worry about taking along. But to work with this deck and read the messages in the forest is really magical. So I've really enjoyed this deck. I know there's a bunch of other of these little tiny decks. I think there might be a mermaid one. There's a doors one. This is the only one that I have, but I quite enjoy it. The Whispering Woods Oracle. Next, I have two Oracle decks, both of which I love. Two favorites, both from the same creator, and that's Kristen at Over the Moon Academy. So the first deck, which is of the two, the deck that I got first, is the Life Path cards, and it says Life Path cards on the back. And this is one of my all-time favorite Oracle decks. I've thought about maybe I'll do a little bit of a review of this deck sometime. And the deck is based on paths. So every deck has a different path on it. Some of them have people, but there aren't really faces in the deck. This is a really good deck for meditation, I think. This is a really good deck for journaling. This is a good deck for intention setting, thinking about, the path that you're on, at least I find. And there's actually a free course called Life Path Cards Course that kind of goes with this deck and has a bunch of different exercises, meditations, and I think vision boards, and identifying which paths that you would like to be on and not like to be on, and exploring that. So I really love this deck. I loved it as soon as I saw it, which I saw it on Little Red Tarot. But it's available through, I want to say it's Make Playing Cards. Yeah, these are Make Playing Cards deck. So that is one of my absolute favorite Life Path cards. And something that's cool about the Life Path cards that I find useful is that they are numbered just on the back of the card. So there isn't like a book that goes with it or anything like that, but the numbering is useful because then when you're journaling and things like that, you can keep track of which card you're working with, right? Or if you shuffle and draw a card, you can quickly identify which card that is, just based on that number. So that's the Life Path cards by Kristen at Over the Moon Academy, one of my absolute favorite Oracle decks. I also love another of Kristen's decks that I have, which is the Nature Magic Oracle, which I remember the name because I wrote it on the box. This is another Make Playing Cards deck. I think I showed this deck in my video on black and white decks that I love. It also has the name of the deck on the back, Nature Magic Oracle. And this deck has a bunch of adjectives on the bottom and kind of plant-based imagery on the top. I think it's really an evocative deck. It speaks very clearly. No guidebook needed for a deck like this. You could read it in a spread, or you can also, I find that these are interesting cards to use as kind of a qualifier or a clarifier when drawing tarot cards. You can ask about, what those energies are doing or how they are, the state of those energies, and these kind of descriptive words then give an idea about that. Very cool deck. Again, you don't see a lot of black and white Oracle decks, but I really like them, and I really love this one, the Nature Magic Oracle, which is also Make Playing Cards. Next, my first ever Oracle deck that I ever bought. Was it first or second? It was first. It was the first Oracle deck that I ever bought, and I love it, and I made this bag for it. My first ever Oracle deck is the Earthbound Oracle, and that is by Andrew Liam Swartz of Skull Garden, also the creator of the Wooden Tarot, which I don't have, and I believe another Oracle deck and also a Lenormand deck, neither of which I have. So these cards, I really love the wood that the paintings are on. I think that gives such an interesting texture. And it's a definite nature-based deck without being an animal deck, with straightforward keywords that very much match the imagery. This one feels like a very balanced deck to me. There are some little sets of cards that go together, so there are cards for the elements, for example. One card for each one, such as this one, Fire and Earth. And I really like that this deck is a nature-based deck. I like the small size. I like the back. It goes with a lot of other decks. I really like the color palette. You can see the color palette's kind of almost similar to the Black and the Moon decks, with the kind of woody colored background. And I think that it reads really clearly with the keywords. I really don't like keywords on my tarot, but on Oracle decks they can be great. And I think that they're great on this deck, the Earthbound Oracle. Next, a deck that I do have, a tarot deck by the same creator. And this is another nature-based deck, which is the Nocturna Oracle by Megan Weirweden. Way back when my channel was new, near the start of the year, I did a little walkthrough of this deck because this deck was my treat for my birthday. And I've really enjoyed working with this deck. And Megan created the Anima Mundi Tarot, which is a tarot that I work with a lot. And the deck has gilding on the sides. And this deck has some animal cards. And it has also some plant. And you can see the kind of linen finish in the light. There we go. And so this is all related to, creatures and plants of the night, hence the Nocturna name. And I think that Megan's artwork is really stunning. This is a deck, I somewhat struggle with this deck just because there are quite a few of the cards that are plant based, and I really don't have a big plant-based knowledge. I don't have a lot of ready associations for plants. The animal cards come a lot more smoothly to me, you know, or other cards like Geode, for example, come more smoothly to me than some of these plants. But there is a little guidebook which has some associations for each, so that is really helpful. I would like to get to know this deck a bit better for sure. It's 48 cards. So that's the Nocturna Oracle by Megan Weirweeden. Sorry if I'm butchering your name there. The Nocturna Oracle. Next up, a deck that I know a lot of people really love this year, the Illuminated Earth Oracle deck by Claire Mack. And this deck is also a nature-based deck, and it has a lot of different textures in it. Here's the back. She does marbling paper, which is really cool, and it has keywords. There is a bit of a system to this deck in terms of suits. I did a walkthrough of this deck wherein I explained that. I don't really work with the suits or like types of cards at all. I just look at the imagery and the keyword. And this deck is a really good reader for me. There is a little guidebook as well, but I don't find that you know, you need the keyword, or sorry, that you need the guidebook too much to read this deck. I think it's very much comprehensible, you know, and readable without the guidebook. There are some cards that I take out of this deck, which are the cards that have like faces in them. I just find that they're beautiful. I just find the deck a little bit more cohesive without. And this is a deck that just from the second I saw it, you know, online, I knew this deck would join my collection eventually. Stunning. The cardstock is amazing on this deck. It shuffles really well. You know, even the inside of the box is my favorite color. That's always a good sign. So that is the Illuminated Earth Oracle by Claire Mack. And if there are any, like some of these decks I've done walkthroughs of before, or reviews or first impressions, things like that. If there's any decks in here, I'm just showing a quick flip through of each for the sake of not making this video 48 hours long. But if there's any deck on here that you've never seen before, you would like a more detailed walkthrough or review of, please do let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to talk about decks, of course. That's, you know, why we're here. So, continuing on with the decks. Okay, gotta grab some here. This next deck is one that I don't see very often, and this is a deck that's on Make Playing Cards, actually. And the deck is called the Dark Moon Damsel Oracle, and the artist is Lorena Joy. It doesn't come with any you know, anything to hold it really, so I keep it in just a plain bag. It has these crystals on the back. And I think that the artwork in this deck is beautiful. I like the keywords in this deck. I really love the color palette of this deck. You know, if I could like just design a color palette for a deck, you know, this one comes very close to the color palette that I would choose. There are not too many cards in the deck, but I really like these. I think that this would go really well. I've never worked with it. I don't have it in my collection, but who knows? Maybe one day I will. I feel like this deck would look really nice with the Sasarai Beetle. Like, I feel like there's just a tiny bit of resonance in terms of the styles to me. But this deck looks great with many other decks, and I like this kind of. It kind of has with its color palette. It has a bit of that kind of Nocturna nighttime feel as well, which I really like. Next up, I have the Rackham Oracle This was the second Oracle deck I ever bought, and I bought it unfortunately before I found out that the creator of this deck, who runs Duck Soup Productions, also sells some material that I have major problems with. I would not have patronized that website had I known about that. But this is a beautiful deck, and it's based on, of course, the work of Arthur Rackham. And this is the back. It has some significator cards. And I don't usually like decks based on pre-existing art, but I think because it's an Oracle deck rather than a tarot, it doesn't feel like forced in the same way that sometimes the pre-existing art being try to fit it into the tarot system can feel a little bit round peg and square hole for me. I don't actually have any decks like this, I don't think. But I like the keywords in this deck. I like, of course, the Arthur Rackham's art style. It's very intricate. It's very, he illustrated kind of folklore and things like this. Yeah. It's a little bit, there's like a little bit creepy, but who doesn't love a little bit creepy, right? So, and there's a lot of cards in this deck. And it just came with a little bit of information about Arthur Rackham on there, who lived from 1867 to 1939. So that is the Arthur Rackham Oracle, and I'm struggling with the tuck box here. There we go. Next up, Oracle deck that probably lots of folks have seen and have, which is the Supra Oracle, which is by Usi. And Usi, we know, also created the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot. They recently kickstarted a deck. I didn't back it, but it's beautiful. The Oracle deck based on the periodic table, the elements, that looked really interesting. So I have first edition number 813 out of 5,000, which I don't know if you can see there, but I open it. I open the deck from the bottom just to keep the seal, It's beautiful, like red inside the box. This deck is gorgeous, and I feel like there's so much depth to this deck. I would like to spend more time with this deck. I will say that I find this deck a difficult one. And part of the reason that I find it a difficult one is that I don't like the book. I did buy the book, which is sold separately, but I don't really like the writing. Something about the writing style just doesn't work for me. So I work with this deck more intuitively, and it's stunning. Like, the details of this deck are mind-boggling. But I do find some of this deck a bit challenging at times. But it's a Usi deck. The cardstock is beautiful and shuffles incredibly. The box is gorgeous. The production of Usi decks is always so amazing. A little bit of metallic shine there. Supra Oracle. Beautiful deck. Next up, I have a deck that, again, probably many folks will have seen this deck, and that's the Soul Cards, and this is Soul Cards 1. I know there's a second one. This deck, I have worked with some. Here's the back. I did not click with this deck the way that I expected to. I think that the art is incredible. It's very, very abstract. No guidebook. This is 100% a deck to read intuitively. And I have worked with it. And this deck, actually, this was a deck that I brought to my counseling to introduce my counselor to Oracle cards. So that was an interesting experience. I wish the deck was numbered so that it was easier when journaling to refer to which card, but they're not, although they are numbered inside the guidebook randomly. You know, the numbers don't correspond to the meanings or anything like that. If somebody knows, how, what marker to use that will stick on cards like this that are really, really glossy, please let me in on that secret, because I would like to number these cards, and I think that I would use them more. So that's the soul cards, and it's a mass market deck, very widely available, affordable. And now it's 60 cards, and there's also a soul cards too as well, which is, I believe, the same size. Getting towards the end of the collection now. Okay. Next up are two decks that I love, and people who watch this channel will know that I love and will know that they were coming up. I have the Dreamtime Reading Cards by Laura Bowen, and Laura Bowen's Oracle decks have become some absolute favorites of mine. This is the one that I got second, and I've worked with less than her other deck, which I'll show next. It is painted in dot painting style. Laura Bowen is an Indigenous Australian artist. The book for this deck is amazing. And I can't even like really place what it is about these decks, but the first reading that I did for myself with this deck, you know, I had pulled a few cards and read the guidebook, and then sobbed totally unexpectedly. I didn't, you know, think that I was in that kind of place where that would happen, but this deck just emotionally affected me so much from the first time that I worked with it, that it's really a special deck to me. And this is a deck that I definitely want to spend more time working with in depth in 2020. It's a fairly recent addition to my collection, so I would just like to spend more time with this deck. I also have, and this is a deck I've had longer and spent more time with, the Saltwater Reading Cards by Laura Bowen. And this, oh no, I cannot just pick one favorite, but this might be it. If I picked one favorite Oracle deck of all time, this might be it. I'm a Pisces, and water-themed decks appeal to me immediately. The color palette of this deck appeals to me immediately. It's, of course, based on the life of saltwater, and there are keywords on the deck. It's very summery feeling to me. Again, Laura's guidebooks are incredible. Incredible messages. I work with this deck as a single card, and then always read the guidebook. There are very few decks that I would say that I work with that I always read the full entry of the guidebook, and these two decks, the Laura Bowen decks, are that for me. Like, the colors are incredible. Like, just, I am in awe of this deck, and I felt very close to this deck immediately, and I've worked with this deck. You know, I only got this deck this year, and I've worked with it probably the most of my Oracle collection in 2019. I paired it a lot when I got this deck. I paired it a lot with the Numinous Tarot, which may seem like a bit of a random combination, but just the colors I felt like looked really good together, and I got great readings with that deck. So it's Saltwater Reading Cards. Next up, okay, this deck is the Water Drop Oracle, and I of course wrote it on the box, and the reason that I did that was because it's I want to say make playing cards. It could be Printer Studio, but I want to say make playing cards. And this is a deck, please, like, if you know where these images came from, let me know in the box, because I can't find where this came from. And what it was that I found a website where the host of the website, or the creator, had posted all of these images and a card back picture, and had posted all of these images with keywords. And you know, as a Pisces, this deck is going to scream out to me immediately. So watery. It's all water. So the creator had posted all of these images. And it was like, here's some images. If you want to get them printed up into a deck for yourself, go right ahead. And I did that. So I put them on to make playing cards myself and had it printed. But now, no matter how much searching I do online, I cannot for the life of me find the website where I got these images from in the first place. So if you are the creator of the artwork of this water droplet oracle, please get in touch with me so that I can credit you properly in the box below. I don't like not being able to name the creator of a deck. And while I uploaded it to make playing cards, I certainly didn't make the art. So that's the Water Drop Oracle, which is a deck I've never seen anybody do a walkthrough of either. It's a really neat deck. Okay, getting very towards the end now. This deck is the Crystal Wisdom Healing Oracle by Judy Hall. And this is a mass market deck. It has silver gilding and kind of white and gray backs. And this deck is a crystal deck. And it has really beautiful photography of crystals in it. And this deck I bought in part to help me learn more about crystals, and partly with the idea that I could display a card, and I do this. I could display a card on my table or something like that for the energy of that crystal without necessarily having to actually own the crystal. So that's mostly what I use that deck for, not for readings really, but for studying and learning about crystals. So it's the Crystal Wisdom Healing Oracle by Judy Hall. And I think Judy Hall also wrote like the Crystal Bible and some crystal books as well. So definitely an important, like, knowledgeable author to make a deck like that, which is cool. Finally, the last little tiny section of my collection is the playing cards. And I can't read playing cards, but I really want to learn because I have some connection to ancestors who read playing cards. So I feel drawn to it, but I don't really know how to do that. So first I'll show these together. I backed on Kickstarter and got 2 copies of the Open Portals playing cards. So these came in a light and dark version, and I got them both in part because I love James R. Eads' work and just could not resist, and in part because I thought this deck also has a game that goes with it. So my plan is to use one for gaming and one for oracle reading. So I got the dark side deck for oracle reading, and there's these different titles, and I got on the Kickstarter, it was a Kickstarter only cherry red metallic. I find this deck stunning, really beautiful art, and like I've said, James R. Eads is one of my favorite deck creators. I would buy anything that he made. So I bought two copies of this one, but I have to say I have actually used more the game one. So I bought the dark one for Oracle, and then it also comes in light, which has the light back. Also got it in the cherry red, and I also got this one to play games with, to play the Open Portals game. This is a very definite deck that I would like to spend more time with in 2020. I feel like maybe with learning, I'm not sure exactly how learning Lenormand, which has the playing card insets, versus learning playing card divination itself, like how those relate or how those would relate for me. But I would like to spend more time with this deck, even, not reading it strictly as a playing card deck, but based on James's images. So that's the Open Portals playing card light and dark. I also have from the Fledermaus Workshop by Con and Selesnik, the poker deck of the Drowning World, a panoramic parable told in 52 scenes. This deck I read without playing card associations. I read it more as kind of like almost like a pip deck, I guess. So it has 4 suits. It has icebergs. And it has smokestacks or chimneys. It has birds, which I clearly read as the air suit. Icebergs are water. The chimneys are fire. And then it has these plants, which I read as earth. And of course it has the, the court cards of a playing card deck. So this is just, I saw this deck and was like, that's gorgeous. Gotta add that. And it has this incredible marble backing on it. And I will say, the creators of this deck were really great. I messaged them and to ask about shipping to Canada, and they said like, yes, absolutely. It was the quickest email exchange I've ever had, and it came very quickly. So that's the Poker Deck of the Drowning World by the Fledermaus Workshop. Finally, the very last deck in my collection, and this one is a playing card deck too. And this one I usually keep in my office. And this deck just makes me happy, and I ended with it, It's a happy one to end on, and I'm going to draw a card for us. Bob Ross playing cards. These are just, how can you not love Bob Ross? And every single card back has Bob Ross on it, and they just all have quotes and messages from Bob Ross. So I would just finish this video with a great message, always encouraging, from the Bob Ross playing cards, which is the last deck that I will mention. Okay. Here we go. Talent is pursued interest. Anything you're willing to practice, you can do. What better message to end on at a time when I know a lot of us are doing things like making resolutions or plans about things we'd like to learn or things we'd like to get better at in the new year. Our message from Bob Ross, that anything that we can practice, we can do. And that's why I love keeping that deck in my office as a little inspiration. So that has been the entirety of my Oracle deck collection, 34 decks. Thank you so much for watching if you've stuck with me this long. If you have some favorite Oracle decks that I've mentioned or that I haven't mentioned, please do share in the comment box below. Love chatting about cards, of course. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you a good day and, of course, a happy new year. Bye.